So we're right now faced with coronavirus, and it has been a very deadly virus. And the WHO, the CDC, and Lancet have all stated that it is an airborne infection. It spread through the airborne route. But before coronavirus, we have already had a lot of other infections and diseases which have spread through the airborne route. The leading disease which spread through the airborne route, the deadliest of them all, the one which people think is a disease of the past but is very much present today and is killing a lot of people every year in India and across the world, is tuberculosis. Tuberculosis spreads through the airborne route, and there has been a key role played by ventilation in the prevention of spread of airborne infection of tuberculosis. We are going to look at this important study today that was done by Eugene Richardson, Carl D. Morrow, Daryl B. Khalil, Linda Gale Becker, and Robin Wood. These are from the Division of Infectious Diseases and Geographic Medicine, Stanford University School of Medicine, Stanford, California, USA, and other places which include Desmond Tutu HIV Center of Cape Town in South Africa. Now, before I start talking about this particular research, I want to say that this is a copyright of 2014 Richardson et al., but this is distributed under the open access article of the Creative Commons Attribution License, which permits unrestricted use, distribution, and reproduction in any medium, provided the original author and source are credited. So this is a 100% original article by these particular authors, and we are resharing for the sake of research and awareness. And this is under the Creative Commons license, which is right here in front of us. The Creative Commons license attribution 14 can be accessed at this link which is there in the description, and here we are free to share, adapt, and we have to give appropriate credit. And one more important thing is the disclaimer of warranties. So you're requested to please read this carefully. Coming back to our research, so this was done in schools of South Africa. Why schools were chosen? Because a lot of students of the school going age are now being prone to tuberculosis. The incidence of tuberculosis is greater than 1000 per lakh people in 2012 in South Africa. Apart from that, the plausible explanation for high prevalence is the continued existence of crowded, poorly ventilated indoor environments, and we look at how schools, the epidemic is notably disquieting in schools, because unlike prisons, it says the vulnerable population is compelled to be present. A student is compelled to be present in the school. He or she has no other option. So to give you a brief abstract of this particular paper, we see that despite the improvement in overall TB cure from 40 to 74% between 1995 and 2011, TB incidence in South Africa continues to rise, and the students have to be present, and their older learners of 15 to 19 age are at particular higher risk, given the smear positive rate of 427 people per lakh population, because this are significantly spending a lot of time indoors, and high schools are very important locations for potential TB infection and thus prevention efforts. So it is also an opportunity for architects, designers, engineers to use schools as an opportunity for prevention. Now we see in Delhi right now, as we are talking about the vaccination, schools are being used as vaccination centers. So the ventilation in these schools is notably important. How did they do this experiment? What was the method of this experiment? So they set out to use carbon dioxide monitors. Now carbon dioxide is a very important gas because it is released in the expiration, when we expire out gases, when we exhale out gases rather, carbon dioxide is a biomarker. So we take in oxygen, give out carbon dioxide in a closed room. If there are 5 people, there will be more release of carbon dioxide because there are 5 people, and this release will be even more, and it will remain high, and the carbon dioxide percentage will be relatively high in a room with 5 people if there is no outside air, which will obviously have lesser carbon dioxide is allowed to come inside. Then the inside air is allowed to go outside, which technically means there will be, if there is low ventilation, then the carbon dioxide percentage in the inside will be much higher. And here they have used the Rudnick-Milton equation, and they have calculated rebreathe fraction. So what is rebreathe fraction? Very interesting. It also relates to the shared air. Now what is shared air? When we exhale, we are giving out certain amount of gas into the room. Now this gas, if it is quickly replaced by outside air, then it will be fresh air again. But if it is not quickly replaced, the other person in the room is going to take that certain percentage of that exhaled air of somebody else, which is called the rebreathed air. So they have calculated the rebreathed fraction of 1.6%. So there is 1.6% air which is rebreathed at values of 1000 ppm. So that means that the critical value here is 1.6%, which means that if it is more than this, then the carbon dioxide percentage is more than 1000 ppm. So we want the carbon dioxide percentage to be less than 1000 ppm, because if the carbon dioxide percent is less than 1000 ppm, that means it is more other gases, and the carbon dioxide is being quickly replaced as it is being produced by humans. So, and these values of 1.6% rebreathe fraction correlates to ventilation rate of 8.6 liter per second and 12 air changes per hour for standard classrooms of 180 square meter cube volume, 180 meter cube. That means that this is an ideal condition. So if it is reaching the threshold of 1.6% of rebreathe fraction, which we are going to talk soon, then it is good enough. Now the conclusions here was that in order to have a decrease in the smear positive rates of high school adolescents in South Africa, the proposal to achieve CO2 levels of 1000 ppm and less through natural ventilation will not only help achieve WHO guidelines for providing children with healthy indoor environments, but it will also be the low cost intervention for helping the controlling the TB epidemic in areas of high prevalence. So let's see how they went about and they did this. So this is the Rudnick-Milton equation which they have used, but before that I'm going to talk certain things about recirculated indoor air, which has been long recognized as the mechanism for infectious disease transmission. And by measuring carbon dioxide levels in room, one can estimate probabilities of TB transmission using the equation developed by Rudnick-Milton. Now this is, we'll talk about this equation. And one more thing that these people have come out is that the effective contact rate per case. Now what does that mean? It means that an infected person should be made to be in contact with lesser than 14 people. So let's read this. Effective TB control is achieved when effective contact number is lower than the number of individuals who can be expected to develop infectious pulmonary TB over lifetime. That means that over a lifetime, this contact number, over a lifetime, these people who develop infectious pulmonary TB, the number of individuals, who are able to get infected, this number must be reduced to less than 14, right? And we see here that exhaled breath is the vehicle for release of airborne infectious particles. Now if we measure the exhaled breath right now of any person who's talking and breathing, it will be right at the mouth, it will be around 4000 ppm, whereas the approximate outdoor level is 350 to 450 ppm. You know, that is the normal ambient CO2 levels. Now here we have, you know, used Rudnick-Milton equation, which is a derivative of Wills-Rayleigh equation. We're just going to look at, so this is the Rudnick-Milton equation, you know, which uses these parameters, which uses the average fraction of indoor breath that is inhaled, critical rebreathe fraction, number of infectors, very important, very crucial factor. We usually keep it as 1. That means we have one person in the class who is the infector, and we are seeing how many people is he exposing himself to and how many people are getting exposed to him. Total exposure time, we'll see students in the classroom is the total number of students, so we have kept it at 31. Now why 31? We'll talk about that. And indoor, so the indoor CO2 generation rate, indoor CO2 concentration, outdoor CO2 concentration, these are all put into these values, into this equation to get the value. Now what was the data collection procedure? So they, you know, put these CO2 meters around the neck of the students or in their pockets, and then they calculated for their own respiration levels, you know. So basically they took all the measures, and the meters, you know, which were also tied to the location where they were going. So we could measure the GPS location of the student, and we could measure the CO2 measurements of the equation, and these were all analyzed using a computer. And this was done for total 509 hours of school time. That means 91 school days, and 64 students were, you know, monitored using these portable CO2 devices, using lanyards, you know, they were there hung in their neck. So wherever they would go, classroom 1, classroom 2, classroom 3, we'll just show through an illustration what actually is happening. So for example, this is the school plan view, and first the student is going to class A, class B, class C, class, you know, C1, C2, then E, F, G, and, you know, D also is there. So this is the throughout the day. First he is going to one class, then one lab, then, you know, one particular area in the school, and we have compared all these people have compared all the results. So first of all, they've solved the critical rebreathe fraction. So as we have said that the effective contact number per case must be reduced to less than 14 to reduce the current TB burden. And since 50% of the transmission occurs in school, so we took this 14 into 50%, which is 7. So the contact rate, effective contact number, is half of 14, which is 7. And we took this D as 7 for 30 susceptibles. That means the class has around 30 people, and the contact number was taken to be half of 14, that is 7. So based on this, it was found out that the critical rebreathe fraction was through this equation, which was calculated to be 1.6%. So not calculated, which was derived from these results. So what we found out is that in this particular school, you know, for the total number of students, the threshold value was this dotted red line, and there were students who were spending around 35% time within the good range of CO2, that is less than 1000 ppm, which was calculated at 1.66%. So what they calculated was, they calculated critical rebreathe fraction, and based on that they analyzed it with the results of the experiment. So we see that everything on the right side of this right line was when the students were at risk. Anything on the left side was when the students were safe. So on the right side you can see 1000 to 1499 was around 26%, 1500 to 1999 is around 13-14%. So that means that there is a substantial risk. So what it means is that our findings, that is their findings, demonstrate that students spend around 60.2% of their time above the recommended threshold. So what this means is that if we add 25% plus 14% plus 7-8% plus 2-3% plus 2% plus 1%, everything on the right side of this particular graph we found that result to be 60.2%. So 60% students in a class are in risk. That means, no, not 60% students, a student 60% of the time in the school is at risk of being exposed to ill ventilated spaces in a school where he is compelled to be throughout the day, or actually the substantial part of the day. And as we have seen that this was very much more in, you can see that in classes E and F, for example, the concentrations were the highest. They were high enough in G also, in H also. They were the best in D and C1. C1 because it was outside, outdoor, as you can see, it is right in the park. C2 also is right outside when they were outside in that yard, and it was worst in classrooms E and F, right? So this is at par with, so when they are putting the threshold at 1000, this is at par with the various countries which are actually suggesting. So for example, Portugal suggests 1026, Sweden suggests 1000, Netherlands suggests 1200, UK suggests 1500, USA 1100, and their proposal is 1000, which is a ventilation rate of 8.6 liter per second per person, which means that it is as per the critical rebreathe fraction of 1.6%, which they have calculated. Now the discussion is that the current TB prevention programs, now very important, have been complacent in promoting the prevention benefits of ventilation. So there is a growing consensus that biomedical solutions will be insufficient to tackle TB epidemic in low and middle income countries. Thus a renewed focus on environmental interventions is called for. And given the higher smear positive rates of high school adolescents in Cape Town, the proposal to achieve CO2 levels of 1000 ppm through natural ventilation will not only achieve WHO guidelines, and this 1000 ppm correlates to 12 ACH for a standard classroom of 1800 meter cube, that is the volume. 180 meter cube. And this will also help us curb the TB epidemic in the old fashioned way, that is through improvements in air hygiene. And it should be recognized that the benefits of increased ventilation are not limited to prevention of TB transmission. It will also help us in decreased respiratory illness like other diseases, like measles and also influenza, and also currently COVID-19. Fewer school absences and improved cognitive function have been demonstrated in the literature. So this was our discussion, and we are very sure that if all the schools across the world can achieve ventilation rates which are high enough, 12 ACH, 8.6 liter per second per person, and the easiest way of monitoring this is by monitoring the CO2 levels, which should be consistently below 1000 in all the spaces in the classroom. This will not only, as we have suggested, help in prevention of diseases, airborne diseases like TB, COVID and others, but it will also result in the well-being of the students. This studies had a few limitations which are there for you to read, but we have found out that this study is a very important milestone, because this is the first study which has used the Rudnick-Milton equation to determine ventilation recommendations for transmission of tuberculosis under non-steady conditions in the school. Here there were live students in live classrooms who actually went out and they were being monitored. So this is a breakthrough study, and this talks about the importance of ventilation for prevention of tuberculosis transmission and hence all the other airborne diseases. So thank you very much.